Hello and welcome to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. I'm relojo-howell, founder of Psych. I love talking to people and learning about their stories. So in each episode of Psych Chat, I'll be talking to fascinating people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. Join me here at Men's Radio Station every week and let's have a Psych Chat. Hello, I'm relojo-howell. Welcome to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. So this is another episode of Psych Chat. And as usual, in each episode, I'll be talking to interesting people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. Well, it's a lovely day in London today. The sun is out, and so most people are actually in a better mood. But on a personal level, I'm happy and excited because we've got an exciting episode here at Men's Radio Station. We're talking about an interesting topic, which is all about fashion and mental health. It's not something that really we tend to link with mental health, so it's kind of interesting to get a different take on that. Well, on a personal level, I don't really have a good fashion sense. I tend to wear the same kind of clothes, and also when I go to on special occasions, I lean towards being presentable rather than being fashionable. But I think some people really would rather be fashionable, and rightly so, because it really affects our confidence, it affects our self-esteem when we dress well. And I just want to bring this interesting piece of research. In 2012, researchers from Northwestern University in the US found that wearing specific articles of clothing can have an effect on our psychology and performance. They found out that clothes can influence our psychological state. And we'll talk more about that with our expert here when it comes to clothing. And we also try to talk about that in relation to mental health. So joining me today is Andy Boothman. He is the founder of Dresscode Shirts, a startup fashion design business. They design and make high-quality shirts. Their designs are inspired by passion for technology and the digital world, expressing things like coding, algorithms, and artificial intelligence. It's the type of things that are far more well communicated online, but offline, there's little that allows people to express these interests in a stylish and professional way. Andy, thanks for joining me here at Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. How are you?
I'm really well, Dennis. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me along.
Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, to start off with, could you just give me a quick rundown of your trajectory in life, of how you ended up with doing fashion? I suspect that you did not really start doing fashion straight away, because I had a look at your website and you seem to have a different background. So if you could just give us a quick rundown on that.
Yeah, sure. Dresscode actually started in 2018. My background is in branding and brand communication. I've been doing that for just over 20 years. But lots of things happen in life, and I got to a point in 2018 where I was looking around and saw just the sheer volume of people who are involved with the sort of digital and technical world. I mean, it's a place that we can't really avoid today. We're all living and breathing it 24/7. But then when you look at fashion and you look at clothing in general, sure that you can go and get a t-shirt with a slogan on, but there was nothing really that presented itself as being a bit more professional, a bit smarter in that space. And I felt there was really a job to be done there, because this is a huge amount of people that we're talking to. And yeah, sure, you can turn up in a t-shirt for certain things, but there's also times and places where that's completely inappropriate. So, we set out to sort of explore this and see where things would go.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing that I want to ask you is, I suppose this is very elementary, but why do we actually wear clothes? I suppose there's a power in wearing clothes, but there's also power in not wearing clothes. But let's start off first with, why do we wear clothes?
Okay. Clothes have been a huge part of the evolution of man and women over the centuries. So originally, clothes were there to protect us. From the most basic of things, sitting down on stony ground. If you've got something that's between your bottom and the ground, it's going to make it more comfortable. If you've got things on your feet, you can walk further. as things have evolved, we've created some fantastic textiles that repel water, and we have garments for pretty much every type of environment today, whatever it might happen to be. So that's really where it's come from. But as that has evolved, it's become much more an expression of many, many other parts of your personal demeanour, your outlook, a great way of representing your kind of inner self, and also connecting with your inner emotions as well.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I mentioned that that there's a power in why we wear clothes, because it gives a sense of your importance, shall we say, and it also projects a sense of identity, and it also promotes your confidence, which we will touch upon later. Yeah. But also there's a power in not wearing clothes. The reason why I mentioned that, because exactly a year ago, in the run-up to Brexit, there was an academic from the University of Cambridge. I don't know if you've heard his story, but there was an academic called Dr. Victoria Bateman. Right. And the way she framed her protest about Brexit is she went to different radio stations. She even went on television, not wearing any clothes. So that's just one, demonstration that clothes, or the absence of it, is actually powerful. But you already touched upon this, but I just want to get a better sense of how we evolve wearing clothes over time. Could you mentioned that we pretty much have different garments for all sorts of occasions and how it has evolved. But could you just touch upon like what kind of, like, how did it affect fashion in a sense? Sure.
I think what we need to kind of recognise is that as creatures, we are our strongest sense is visual. So we make an enormous amount of assumptions in an incredibly small amount of time based on what we see visually. And when we're looking at things with the visual through our eyes, you're looking for things that represent or mirror some of your own sort of inner feelings, emotions, what you connect with as a person, because ultimately we're social creatures. So when we're meeting people in busy spaces, busy offices, we're looking for people who are reflecting back some of our own sort of values. These can be microscopic, small elements. It could be tiny details of colour. It can be specific types of markings, patterns. There's many, many different sort of things. But we're talking both to our sort of inner self as well as expressing our outer self. So clothes are working two levels all the time. They're saying things to you, the person that's wearing them, but they're also sending messages out to the people around you. And it comes back to this whole kind of tribe and wanting to be part of a social grouping. Clothes are really important for that. Going back to your point about no clothes, when you haven't got the clothes there, then it's very difficult actually to say what groups and what interests somebody might have. It would be nigh on impossible for someone to express that without actually having body art or other things like that.
But I think it's useful in the sense that it actually attracts attention. But I just want to throw something, a personal question to you while we're talking about clothing. So what made you decide to wear these clothes today? Is it more like utilitarian, or it's just your fashion sense?
First and foremost, I believe anyway that clothes should always be about comfort. That's got to be.
You're not alone in that. I also believe it's all about comfort.
First and foremost, whatever you choose to put on, whatever day it might happen to be, you need to be comfortable in it, because if you're not, then that immediately translates out in your body language, and even just in your voice. Everything about you as a person will be affected if you're not comfortable. So what I've chosen today is a combination of comfort but also a little bit of warmth, because it's not the warmest out there at the moment. Given that I was going through different environments today, doing the tube as well as the train, I've got my jacket and jumper and shirt on, so it meant that I could layer up and down appropriately, because tube, for example, always tends to be warm, so you want to be having less layers when you're on the tube. But ultimately driven by comfort.
I also I'll also describe what I'm wearing today. I'm actually wearing pretty much the same clothes I was wearing last week. I was wearing a blazer, and I was wearing a jumper and jeans and my usual pair of shoes. So yeah, I think some people really rather dress to be comfortable and just, for the purpose of the day. But I mentioned to you earlier a piece of research which was carried out in 2012. And out of that research, there's actually a term that is used to describe where we wear clothes, and it's called enclothed cognition. I suppose it would be good if you could just expound on that, what is enclothed cognition, in 2 minutes.
No problem. So the easiest way of explaining enclothed cognition is you take two groups of people, you give them all a white lab jacket. Half the group is placed in one room, half in another. The first room are told that they are surgeons and are going to be asked to do a task. The second group are told that they are artists and will be asked to do the same task. Neither group is in communication with one another. They both carry out the tasks. Group 1, who have been told surgeons, are very precise, very considered, very disciplined in what they do. Group 2, who are following the artistic route, are much more creative and expressive in what they do, less worried about the detail. And then both groups are videoed, and the two are played back, and you get to watch the two different approaches. This is a great way of showing what enclothed cognition does.
Thank you for telling us what enclothed cognition is. Clearly, there's a sense of identity, a sense of self-confidence when you like what you're wearing. Now, we'll talk more about that and also about your company called Dresscode Shirts. So keep it here at Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station.
Do you want to hang out and really know that you've been listened to? Do you want to debrief and have a laugh and not have to fall down the same hole as every other man in front of you? Then why not go to mensgroups.co.uk, download the Men's Groups ground rules, download the Men's Groups check-in round. There are loads of videos and you can just hit the ground running, growing with other men.
Join me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour on Saturdays at 9 a.m, where I'll be interviewing some of the UK's most influential leaders to understand how they are tackling the stigma that surrounds mental health at work. That's me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour at 9 a.m. on Saturdays here on Men's Radio.
Hi, I'm Noel McDermott, licensed psychotherapist and host of Wellbeing Wednesdays. During Wellbeing Wednesdays, I talk about all things psychotherapy and mental well-being, offering practical help and advice on issues around relationships, anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, whilst trying to improve your mental health and giving you interesting stories from our guests. Join the conversation, have your voice heard, or ask for advice from one of my many specialist guests. We can try and advise you on your problems. Be part of the conversation. Come and join us every Wednesday from 9 to 10:30 p.m. on Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
You're listening to Men's Radio Station, the only radio station that's 100% dedicated to mental health and well-being. We're on air and broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In fact, we never sleep. If you want to listen on the move, please download our app. It's easy to do. www.mensradiostation.com is the website, or follow us on social media. Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Not ready for making tax digital? Struggling to keep up with changes? Or do you simply need a friendly and reliable face to handle your accounting needs? With over 20 years of experience, BBK Partnership in 5 London areas provide personal advice, and all our partners are readily available in person and by phone at times that suit you. Give BBK a call today, 0208 216 2520, or visit our website bbkca.com.
Let me tell you about Jermyn Street Theatre. We are the smallest theatre in the West End, only 70 seats. Jermyn Street Theatre is a hidden gem. It combines the comfort and convenience of the West End with the intimacy of a studio. Every seat has a perfect view of the stage, and even a whisper is audible. Every seat is a premium seat. This is a secret theatre in the heart of the West End, once found, never forgotten.
Hello, this is Men's Radio Station, and you're listening to Psych Chat, with me, Dennis relojo-howell. Now, as you know, in this show, where I'm talking about psychology, mental health, and well-being, and of course, I also talk to fascinating people. Now, if you're interested about psychology and allied fields about this field, you can head on to my website, PsychReg, www.psychreg.org. Now, joining me today is Andy Booth, who is the founder of Dresscode, and we're talking about the relationship of fashion and mental health. Now, before we went to the break, we were talking about enclothed cognition, and basically this is the idea that the kind of dress that you wear actually impacts your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and it also ties in with your identity. Now, of course, the psychology of clothing is fascinating. Now, Andy, would you say clothes could be considered as tools, part of our emotional health? Can we go as far as saying that, clothes is also a kind of, an emotional support system, a comfort zone, if you wish?
Most definitely, I would agree with that. I think it's really important to give what you're wearing the due consideration, really. So thinking about your day ahead on an evening, and thinking, what is it I'm going to be doing tomorrow? Where is it that I'm going to be? And just kind of mapping that out in your head allows you that bit of space, that thinking time to think, right, okay, I know I'm going to be here and here. What does the weather look like? It looks like this, right. That way you can make some informed decisions. You're not going to then wake up the following morning when you're very, very busy and trying to get lots of things done before you get out of the door, and suddenly it's like, what do I wear? Oh, I don't know, I've not really thought about it. And you just grab the first thing that comes, probably falls out of the wardrobe, to be honest. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong per se with that, but I don't think it helps you necessarily be your best self and give you the confidence that you might be looking for. We all have days where we're not feeling so great, and sometimes it's that sitting around in your kind of trackies and bits and pieces is quite nice, and that's all part and parcel of the coping that goes with that. But equally, if you've got to go and do things, be places, be seen, then it's important to think about what you're putting on, because the clothes you put on work in two ways. As much as we often think about wearing clothes for what it's saying outwardly to other people, and will they or won't they like what I'm wearing, it needs to be also saying something to you inwardly, because it needs to be connecting with your own outlook, where you are, and how you're feeling. So, if there's a particular colour that you really, really love, then on the days when you're not feeling so great, that would be your go-to item, because that's going to help cheer you up. That's going to put that bigger smile on your face. I think one of the kind of classic conundrums that a lot of people have is this whole thing of, I'm going to a job interview, I need to wear a suit, I've got to do this, putting clothes on that they never normally wear. And so subsequently you arrive for an interview and you're talking to somebody, and it's really, really not a very fluid conversation, because you're not comfortable, because first and foremost you've got clothes on you would never normally wear, let alone meeting somebody new for the first time. So it's really important that you think about these things and do give it a little bit of sort of pre-plan, I suppose is what I would say, and have those go-to things, whether it's colours, whether it's just a particular jacket or a pair of shoes that you really like, and use them.
Mm-hmm. Now you highlight the importance of wearing something you're comfortable. I understand you work at an office rather than working from home. So what would you normally wear at an office?
It depends on what's happening in the day. So if it's a day where we don't have any visitors per se, then jeans, some comfortable shoes. Depending on the time of year, it could be a t-shirt, it could be a polo shirt, maybe a shirt. It just depends, to be honest, on what's going on. And again, depending on time of year, whether it's got a jumper or a hoodie or a jacket with that. It really does depend. And then if we've got people coming in, or if we've got to go out and present, then slightly changing that up. So probably would be definitely wearing a shirt, sometimes shirt and jacket, depending on what the occasion is. It's quite varied. I like to kind of mix it up a bit. I've definitely got my favourites, both in terms of physical garments and colours. But yeah, I do think it's in some ways for men it's quite tricky because we don't have as many options as women do. Really, it's quite sort of tight, and there's also a lot of external pressures in terms of conforming. So I think that has a big bearing as well.
And the kind of clothes that you actually wear at work, because I'm a freelancer for those of you who follow my line of work, so I usually just work on my pajamas. So that's my comfort clothes. So this what I'm wearing right now. I wouldn't say it's really uncomfortable, but this is rather unusual for me to be wearing this. It's rather unusual for me to be wearing shoes, because I usually just work with my socks, and sometimes I'm barefoot. Now, of course, when we talk about clothing, it actually we're trying to create an impression. We're trying to create a personality, and that's actually linked to first impressions. So, we're trying to create a stereotype. Could you just expound on why actually we do this, and what are the mental processes involved here?
Yep. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are very visual creatures. That is our strongest sense, and the sense that we trust above and beyond everything else. So we're looking for other people that we see visually as connecting with our values, because we're a social animal. We want to be part of a group. So it's very much a case of looking at what can we see. Now we're microprocessing at this point, so every image that we see probably sends hundreds of different messages to us. Because we're doing this at such an immense pace, then there is the inevitable stereotyping that's going on. So certain colours, textures, combinations will either be things that we are drawn towards or away from, depending on our life experience and our expectations from that point of view. So it will be different for everybody, but ultimately what you see is kind of going to drive you in certain directions.
Now, Andy, you mentioned earlier the importance of actually wearing the kind of clothes that you're comfortable with, because you mentioned that, let's say, you come into a job interview, it will really affect your mood for the day. But, like society and companies actually expect us to dress up for certain occasions. So what would be your piece of advice for people, you have to wear something presentable, but at the same time, you also have to balance it with something that you're comfortable. So what would be your advice for them?
Depending on the occasion and how kind of strict the policy was of what you're supposed to be wearing, I would say mix it up. For me these days, I think that the kind of hard lines are very much gone within sort of dress code in general. It's completely acceptable for people to be wearing a shirt, but you don't necessarily have to have ultimate formal trousers on with them. Jeans are massively acceptable. Chinos. There's lots and lots of different ways you can mix these things together. We're just going into a period as well now of oversized fashion becoming really, really kind of big thing, and the suit in particular is going through something of a revolution at the moment in terms of oversized suits. So there seem to be almost as comfortable as your PJs that you were referring to. Lots of people are now going towards this oversized suit with a very casual shirt or T-shirt underneath it, and it's the type of thing that you could almost wear all day.
Also, of course, it's not just for men. We're talking about, from a male perspective, because obviously that's the kind of clothes that we're wearing. But it's also important to realize that it also, you can also see the same thing for women. You mentioned that we're actually more lax about the kind of, dress that we wear in the corporate world. There's actually an instance before that, women are no longer forced to wear high heel if they're working as receptionists. So, that you can see actually the change of dynamics and how we actually treat clothing within industries. And, but, as men, we're kind of wear the same kind of clothes. But would you say that men are more affected by a personal dress sense? Because you mentioned earlier that we kind of like have a limited choice as compared to our female radio manager. each time I come here, she's wearing something different, and I just wish I have the same kind of option.
I agree. I think there's a combination of a couple of things going on here. One is historic. So we've got the sort of many had of formal attire that sits behind where fashion has come from, and men historically have had quite a narrow sort of bandwidth, I think, within that, whereas women's fashion has been very broad, and it has broadened exponentially, I would say, over the years. Men's fashion is catching up, but it still feels like it's a good way behind where women's fashion is today. I think there's a heck of a lot more that we can do with that. But going back to what we were saying before, there's a lot of stereotyping that's involved in this, and no one. You've got to be a very brave person that wants to stand out massively. So it can be very difficult to go completely against the grain in those spaces. You have got to be in your really confident place, I would say, to be doing that, because it will draw a lot of attention on lots of different levels when you choose to sort of stand out as strong as that.
Yeah, because exactly at the end of the day, there's no one really more powerful than fashion. Like if you live in a certain generation, it kinds of control what kinds of clothes that you will be wearing. We're controlled by fashion. But of course, when we talk about clothing, this also ties in with self-image, with self-confidence, and we will be exploring more about this when we come back. And we will also be talking about personal branding, because that's something that you mentioned earlier. Because you mentioned that you work as a graphic designer prior to setting up your company, which is Dresscode. But for now, we'll just pause for a break. Keep it here at Men's Radio Station. You're still listening to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio with Dennis.
You're listening to Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Do you want to hang out and really know that you've been listened to? Do you want to debrief and have a laugh and not have to fall down the same hole as every other man in front of you? Then why not go to mensgroups.co.uk, download the Men's Groups ground rules, download the Men's Groups check-in round. There are loads of videos, and you can just hit the ground running, growing with other men.
Join me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour on Saturdays at 9 a.m, where I'll be interviewing some of the UK's most influential leaders to understand how they are tackling the stigma that surrounds mental health at work. That's me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour at 9 a.m. on Saturdays here on Men's Radio.
Hi, I'm Noel McDermott, licensed psychotherapist and host of Wellbeing Wednesdays. During Wellbeing Wednesdays, I talk about all things psychotherapy and mental well-being, offering practical help and advice on issues around relationships, anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, whilst trying to improve your mental health and giving you interesting stories from our guests. Join the conversation, have your voice heard, or ask for advice from one of my many specialist guests. We can try and advise you on your problems. Be part of the conversation. Come and join us every Wednesday from 9 to 10:30 p.m. on Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
You're listening to Men's Radio Station, the only radio station that's 100% dedicated to mental health and well-being. We're on air and broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In fact, we never sleep. If you want to listen on the move, please download our app. It's easy to do. www.mensradiostation.com is the website, or follow us on social media. Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Talking Therapy Sessions, a new radio show coming soon.
Hear pre-recorded professional counsellors talking live to their clients.
Hear real-life issues being discussed.
Listen to how trained practitioners deal with these issues.
Never had a therapy session before?
Not sure what counselling entails?
Tune in and hear firsthand what a therapy session is really like.
Brought to you by the Men's Radio Station in partnership with the One Stop Psychotherapy Shop and supported by over 200 trained counsellors across the UK.
Hello and welcome to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. I'm Dennis relojo-howell, founder of Psych Chat. I love talking to people and learning about their stories. So in each episode of Psych Chat, I'll be talking to fascinating people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. Join me here at Men's Radio Station every week and let's have a Psych Chat. This is Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. Of course, this is the show where we talk about anything related to psychology, mental health, and well-being. And of course, aside from, hosting this radio show, Psych Chat, I'm also an author. In fact, I just recently published a book called Let's Talk About Behavior. It's a collection of essays on psychology, mental health, and well-being. So if you're interested in this area, go to Amazon. It's available in Kindle. It's also available in paperback and all good bookshops. Now, moving swiftly on, my guest today is Andy Boothman, who is the founder of Dresscode, and we're talking about the relationship between mental health and fashion. This is not something we often talk about, so we kind of really have a delicious conversation here. Now, before the break, we were actually talking about the relationship of clothes and self-image. And I think more importantly, when we talk about clothes and we would talk about, the kind of identity that we're trying to convey to people, it's a way of, signaling that I'm trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right in saying
Absolutely. That's, yeah. It's one of the key things that we look for as humans. We're looking for other people that we can trust, that we can be open with and connected. Now, trust is a huge kind of subject, and being able to offer that and connect that, you've got to be in the right headspace. You've got to feel confident in yourself, and just make sure that the clothes that you're choosing deliver that for you. I mentioned it before, it's about the kind of the two sides of the clothes. So as much as you are projecting out an image, they're also projecting inwards to your values. So first and foremost, I think you mentioned earlier about not necessarily being the most adventurous fashion-wise. That's perfectly fine, because that's you, that's your comfort, that's exactly what will give you the peace to be able to trust other people. And the times when you do step outside of that, you're going to need to kind of take the scale just up and notch things up ever so slightly in different directions, because then you'll still feel comfortable about what you're wearing, Dennis. If suddenly you were to make a huge sort of 180 on what you're normally wearing and go, that's it, complete new wardrobe, this is me now, I don't do that anymore. That would be really, really dramatic and would take a long time for you to get used to. And the kind of knock-on effect to your body language, your persona, all of these things are affected, because everything is connected to how you feel inside in your head. And clothes, I think we often just don't think about this enough. We just chuck stuff on and think, we're done for the day. Whereas, in fact, it can have huge impact in scaling things up and equally scaling things down. So
it's also kind of like branding, you wouldn't expect Boris Johnson to deliver an important statement about the state of the country, about coronavirus, wearing just shirt and jeans. You will have more credibility, I think, if you're wearing the appropriate clothing. But would you say, Andy, that there are some go-to safety net ways that we can navigate through like emotional wardrobe and improve our mental health? Because we've been talking about like how important the choice of clothing is, to uplift your mood. But what's this thing called about emotional wardrobe?
Yeah, within emotional wardrobe, it's being really honest with yourself about where you're at, what your kind of headspace and inner thoughts are, and the people who you're going to be spending time with as well. So, whether they are people who are important to you, close family, friends, supportive, or whether it's people who are looking towards you for leadership and other different things. So you need to bear all of that in mind. But at the end of the day, it's about being true to yourself with your values, finding things that you really, really love. So I mentioned before, colours. It could be colours, could be textures, might even be patterns that you particularly like. I think the thing with slogans that you find on lots of T-shirts, I think that's kind of a little bit of a, how do I describe this? Naff is probably the easiest way that I can kind of describe it, because it doesn't actually say anything.
So you're not a big fan of, people wearing political shirts?
I'm not so much saying political. I mean, that tends to be aligned to people being at particular events and things like that, and that's fine. It's more when people just take a slogan, let's just say it'll be a hashtag or a buzzword that's associated with a particular artist or something like that. Fine, you're kind of expressing to the world that you're connected with that artist and their values, but it doesn't really actually say much about you as a person. And I think these days that we're much more interested in expressing ourselves as individuals and our own kind of nuances and differences, as opposed to aligning ourselves particularly to someone who's big in the media, shall we say.
Now, you're a graphic designer and you founded this company where you design shirts, where you sell shirts. Do you actually take these aspects into account? Of course you do. You take these aspects into account when you're designing your shirts. But do you also I'm just curious, do you also design clothes with political statements? I wouldn't say political statements, like statements which, stir conversations about mental health and well-being. Do you also design those sorts of clothing?
Most definitely. So I'm really fortunate in that with Dresscode I work closely with Savile Row Taylor. And some of the things that I've learned through my time with him is just incredible. Things to do with colour. Blue is, without a doubt, the go-to colour for a lot of people. And that's because there's a sort of safety of it, in that there is a proliferation of blue around us at any given time. And blue will always kind of blend in to varying degrees. Now, blue can equally be quite stand out depending on what you're doing with that colour, but that is without a doubt. You look around and it might not be immediately obvious, but when you do start looking at these things with a bit more analytical eye, you'll see that that's pretty much the go-to. It's a good reason not every jean was blue for a long time, for example.
And of course, clothing, they're very they're like traveling adverts, if you wish. But have you actually collaborated with organizations or brands just to, create more buzz about their brands or about their movement?
That's a really interesting space for us at the moment. We're currently working with a couple of research institutes in Cambridge who have got enormous amounts of data and all kinds of really interesting things that are going on with what they're doing, their research. This is research into global warming and the environment and sustainability. They've really, really struggled in the past to find ways to connect with people, and we're just in the process at the moment of looking at a few different ways that we could get some of that interest out to people through garments, and some of that is actually going to involve technology in the garments as well. So we're looking at things like AI triggers and a few other bits and pieces along the way. So the world of kind of clothing is changing as well at the moment. Technology is coming into the clothes that we wear to kind of add the utility. So it's a really interesting space.
And of course, there's also the idea that you have to be sustainable in the kind of materials that you source. Obviously, if you want to tap into a certain market, the younger generation, because they tend to be more, mindful of these things. But I just want to touch upon what we were talking about, the relationship between garments and well-being. Now, it's easy for people to say that it's really important to look good when you're coming into work, but as a freelancer like myself, now, how are you going to say, okay, I'm not feeling so great today, but I just want to carry on with my project, so why should I make an effort? What's the impact of not, following the things that you have suggested earlier?
I think the impact is, so let's kind of start this at the beginning of the day. You wake up at the beginning of the day, and those first few minutes are going to set the tone for the day in 90% of us, I would say. And, so you're at home and you're not sure who you're going to be interacting with. So even down to the pants and the socks that you choose to put on, if you've got a pair of favourite pants, it might be the design of them, it might be the colour. You mentioned before that you often just wearing socks. Put on a nice, bright, happy pair of socks. If you're not feeling so great first thing in the morning, something that's going to connect with those inner feelings, those things that you want out of the day. You want to be happy, you want to have fun. Maybe it's just quite a fun pattern that's on one of those garments.
And this process that you characterize, is it purely an internal process, or does it manifest itself externally?
No, it is purely internal, and enclosed cognition is something that is so seldomly talked about by lots of media. In fact, just people in general. You mention the term to a lot of people and they go, "What? Never heard of that," because it never gets the attention that it deserves. Yet it is a process that we are all doing every day, and I often believe a lot of us are just not giving it quite enough time. Not saying it needs lots, but just a little bit of time, a little bit of prep into that, and it can make a world of difference. In the same way that if you get halfway through the day and you're not feeling great, a change of clothes can really, really make a difference to how you're feeling.
Now, putting a slightly cynical hat on, let's say I don't really believe what I'm hearing from you right now, that it can actually change my mood. How can you prove this, that this actually, can affect my mood, my well-being, and my mental health?
It'll be different for everybody, but I think if you think of just colours themselves, that in itself has been proven time and time again to have a huge psychological effect on people's emotional state and well-being. So if you've got a lot of grey garments on and you're feeling all a bit down, switch something out for nice, bright and cheerful. It can be something as small, as I mentioned, as the socks, but go for it and it'll make a big difference.
Exactly. That's a very, very good point. Now, if you need more on that, you can actually look on research. Now you're still listening here at Men's Radio Station. This is Dennis Relojo-Howell here at Psych Chat. Back after the break.
Do you want to hang out and really know that you've been listened to? Do you want to debrief and have a laugh and not have to fall down the same hole as every other man in front of you? Then why not go to mensgroups.co.uk, download the Men's Groups ground rules, download the Men's Groups check-in round. There are loads of videos and you can just hit the ground running, growing with other men.
Join me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour on Saturdays at 9 a.m, where I'll be interviewing some of the UK's most influential leaders to understand how they are tackling the stigma that surrounds mental health at work. That's me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour at 9 a.m. on Saturdays here on Men's Radio.
Hi, I'm Noel McDermott, licensed psychotherapist and host of Wellbeing Wednesdays. During Wellbeing Wednesdays, I talk about all things psychotherapy and mental well-being, offering practical help and advice on issues around relationships, anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, whilst trying to improve your mental health and giving you an interesting stories from our guests. Join the conversation, have your voice heard, or ask for advice from one of my many specialist guests. We can try and advise you on your problems. Be part of the conversation. Come and join us every Wednesday from 9 to 10:30 p.m. on Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
You're listening to Men's Radio Station, the only radio station that's 100% dedicated to mental health and well-being. We're on air and broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In fact, we never sleep. If you want to listen on the move, please download our app. It's easy to do. www.mensradiostation.com is the website, or follow us on social media. Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Not ready for making tax digital? Struggling to keep up with changes? Or do you simply need a friendly and reliable face to handle your accounting needs? With over 20 years of experience, BBK Partnership in 5 London areas provide personal advice, and all our partners are readily available in person and by phone at times that suit you. Give BBK a call today, 0208 216 2520, or visit our website bbkca.com.
Let me tell you about Jermyn Street Theatre. We are the smallest theatre in the West End, only 70 seats. Jermyn Street Theatre is a hidden gem. It combines the comfort and convenience of the West End with the intimacy of a studio. Every seat has a perfect view of the stage, and even a whisper is audible. Every seat is a premium seat. This is a secret theatre in the heart of the West End, once found, never forgotten.
Welcome back to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. This is the show where we talk about interesting topics on psychology, mental health, and well-being. Now, if you're following me on social media, you would have known that I actually also run a YouTube channel where I pretty much do the same thing. I also interview people on this topic, but if I can actually get them to the studio, I would do it. So sometimes they're on other countries. That's why I just interview them over Skype. So just head on to YouTube and find my channel, Dennis relojo-howell. Now, going back, I have here Andy Boothman, who's the founder of Dresscode, and we're talking about the importance of the kind of clothes that we choose, the kind of clothes that we wear in relation to our mental health. Now, earlier we're talking about why it's important, and that we're not really more powerful than fashion, because we're governed by fashions regardless of the kind of era that we're living on. But I just want to bring a different twist to this, because a few weeks ago there was a woman who sent an article to Psych Chat. That's the website that I'm managing. Her name is Debbie Murphy, and she's got an interesting story, because she's been hospitalized, and she found out that through being hospitalized that this is actually not quite fashionable. I wouldn't say that's really how she put it, but that's how I would say it, that she's not comfortable with the kind of the hospital gowns that she was put on. So she ended up designing her own hospital gown, and she's been into this tried to promote her own style of gown. And I think it's really a brilliant idea, because the way she put it is that just because you were in the hospital, it doesn't mean that really you have to lose your dignity. And I'll just tell you a bit of story, because 2 weeks ago, I won't go into the detail, but I had a medical procedure, and I have to remove everything. I'm not really bothered that I'm naked in front of 4 strangers, medical strangers, shall we say. But I was thinking, like, for some other people, this kind of, this would bother them. So in respect to the kind of line of work that you do you take this into account, that the sense of style, just, to make people more comfortable? And how have you heard of Debbie Murphy?
I have, and I think it's fantastic what she's done. That's just brilliant. One of the things that fashion is incredibly good at is challenging the status quo. And moving things forward. And why should we all have to just wear the standard gown, whatever that might look like? I imagine it's pretty awful garment, really. And if you've got to wear it for some time, then why not have something that you feel you should feel comfortable in it? Going back to the things we've already talked about, it's so important. So important.
Yeah, especially if you've got cancer. If I'm not mistaken, again, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't checked this, but I think Debbie has got cancer, and obviously she would be wearing hospital gowns for a longer time. So obviously, it's important that you're comfortable and that you feel wonderful about the kind of gowns that you're wearing, because it's part of your identity while you're recovering.
Definitely.
Now, I've pretty much mentioned that you're a founder of Dresscode, but we still haven't, kind of get an idea what exactly are you doing? Are you just designing shirts, or are you just selling shirts? Educate us about your line of work.
Yeah, we are doing, it's the full piece. So we do the research first and foremost, because that's really, really important. I mentioned that we're kind of the only people that are talking kind of technology and the digital world outside of the digital world, shall we say. So spend a lot of time looking at what's going on, what's important to the people in that space. We've done a heck of a lot of research to make sure that we connect with people in the right way, really. From that point of view.
And when you say research, what sort of research? Like, you do market research, like what kind of, your color preference, or?
just actual, how do I describe this? Sort of consumer research, really, to find out what people's values really are, as opposed to what we're being told by the media that people do and don't do. You know, we've touched on stereotyping already this morning, but within the sort of developer and technical space, there's this assumption that everybody can turn up to work in that space wearing jeans and a t-shirt, probably having not washed for a week, and that, you know, they're all kind of pretty much borderline disgusting individuals. That's just a huge stereotype that needs to be completely and utterly squashed. You know, it's not like that at all. There's very few people that could and hopefully would want to turn up looking like that as well. So for us, that's a really, really important part of what we're doing. In terms of the actual designs themselves, we're very kind of aware that not everybody wants to be super out there, super confident, making huge statements. So some of our designs are incredibly subtle. In fact, quite a lot of them, I would say, were very subtle. And that's something that personally I've always found really, really nice. And this is where I think clothing kind of comes into its own with the conversations that you can have with people. If you've got something that's really, really loud and making a huge statement, slogans like we were saying before on T-shirts, from the other side of the room, the other side of the street, half a mile down the road, you pretty much know what that is and what it's saying. Whereas if it's something subtle and small and intricate detail, it might not be that you actually pick up on that for the first 10, 15 minutes that you're talking with someone or you're sat opposite them having dinner. And then suddenly you'll notice that little bit of detail. And I think that's a really, really important kind of piece of discovery, and enables you to enrich your conversation that you're having with that person and really get to know them and, you know, understand them in a much deeper way. So we tend to veer more towards that now. I'm not saying that we don't have some louder stuff, but even within the louder designs, we've tried to build little elements in there that are going to speak to the wearer, that just the wearer will see, that nobody while you're wearing the garment will ever know is there, but it's really, really important that these things are there. And equally, you know, there's just a few little pieces there that as you sat opposite someone, they would discover them. And I think that's really important. You know, people are complicated. And so you need to have that level of complication, shall we say, some layering within what you're wearing to express different elements of your personality.
And I just want to follow up on that, because you said there should be different layering, you know, to suit your the kind of clothes that you're looking for. Because actually, since I moved into this country, I've always bought my clothes online, because when I go to an actual store, I couldn't really find anything of my size. Now, I'm not telling people that you have to adapt to my fun size, but actually there are people like me in this country that, you know, I've got my waist is 28 and the length of my trousers 30, and it's so difficult to find that. So I always buy my clothes online. Yeah. In fact, everything that you can see, with the exception of my shoes, is actually bought online. So I think, speaking to a clothes designer, you should take that into account. You know, like, do not exclude people like us. You know,
definitely.
we do exist.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
most definitely.
For people who are actually interested to see the range of designs that you actually have at Dresscode, where can we find it? Do you actually have an actual shop, or is it all just based online?
So we should be a good fit for you, Dennis. We don't have any physical presence. We're all online.
I love anything online.
Yeah, we're all online. So it's dresscodeshirts.co.uk is where we are. At the moment, there are 9 different designs of shirt that are there. We're still very much in our infancy, so we're just into year 2 of the business, and we've got lots and lots of things that we want to do, including bringing some wearable technology into the clothes. We've already got one piece of wearable in there with a payment device in the cuff of the shirts, which allows you to pay for things contactlessly.
Oh, that's good. So you just basically have something on your calf, and then you tap it, and then
yeah, absolutely. Coming here today, on and off the tube. I just paid straight from my shirt. Didn't need to get anything out of my pocket. Didn't have to worry about getting my phone out or anything like that.
You actually have that right now?
I have that right
now.
Can
I see it?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah. It's just there. You just have a feel there. There's a tiny little chip in the cuff.
Oh God, that is so cool. Well, for the benefit of those of you who can't see it, so basically it's a piece of chip inserted on Andy's cuff. So is that available on your...
It is, yeah.
Okay, so if you want to have, be extra techy on your traveling commute, go to dresscode.co.uk.
Dresscodeshirts.co.uk.
Dresscodeshirts.co.uk, I'm sorry. And of course, you're based in Cambridge, yeah?
We are, yeah. It's a great place. And a place that's of major sort of historical significance in the world of tech and innovation. So I feel quite honoured really to try and emulate some of those people that have come before us, because it has got an amazing track record for.
And just out of interest, where in Cambridge? Because I used to go to Cambridge a lot before I moved to Essex. You could probably tell from my accent that I live in Essex now.
Well, you're not too far away, are you, in Essex? Yeah. So we're just on the outer periphery of Cambridge, near Trumpington. But we're very much connected to the
place,
city.
Yeah,
very much.
Now, for my last question to you, you've actually took a leap from a different background, and then you design shirts now. So, what kind of message that you want people to learn about your line of work in relation to clothing and mental health in half a minute?
I think the thing I would say is don't be afraid to try something new. Yes, I was in branding for a long time, but there is just an itch that I felt I had to scratch, and that's what has become Dresscode. So, have courage in your convictions. Find people around you who share your vision and your beliefs, and who will support you with these things, really, and really go for it. It's so rewarding in itself, just actually acknowledging those feelings and go for it.
Brilliant message, Andy. Thank you again. Thank you for joining me on this special day talking about clothing and mental health. Now, for those of you who actually missed this show, you can always listen to SoundCloud. Again, this is Dennis at Psych Chat.
You're listening to Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Do you want to hang out and really know that you've been listened to? Do you want to debrief and have a laugh and not have to fall down the same hole as every other man in front of you? Then why not go to mensgroups.co.uk, download the Men's Groups ground rules, download the Men's Groups check-in round. There are loads of videos and you can just hit the ground running, growing with other men.
Join me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour on Saturdays at 9 a.m, where I'll be interviewing some of the UK's most influential leaders to understand how they are tackling the stigma that surrounds mental health at work. That's me, Carl Simons, for the Business Hour at 9 a.m. on Saturdays here on Men's Radio.
Hi, I'm Noel McDermott, licensed psychotherapist and host of Wellbeing Wednesdays. During Wellbeing Wednesdays, I talk about all things psychotherapy and mental well-being, offering practical help and advice on issues around relationships, anxiety, depression, drugs and alcohol, whilst trying to improve your mental health and giving you an interesting stories from our guests. Join the conversation, have your voice heard, or ask for advice from one of my many specialist guests. We can try and advise you on your problems. Be part of the conversation. Come and join us every Wednesday from 9 to 10:30 p.m. on Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
You're listening to Men's Radio Station, the only radio station that's 100% dedicated to mental health and well-being. We're on air and broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In fact, we never sleep. If you want to listen on the move, please download our app. It's easy to do. www.mensradiostation.com is the website, or follow us on social media. Men's Radio Station, where men really talk.
Talking Therapy Sessions, a new radio show coming soon.
Hear pre-recorded professional counsellors talking live to their clients.
Hear real-life issues being discussed.
Listen to how trained practitioners deal with these issues.
Never had a therapy session before?
Not sure what counselling entails?
Tune in and hear firsthand what a therapy session is really like.
Brought to you by the Men's Radio Station in partnership with the One Stop Psychotherapy Shop and supported by over 200 trained counsellors across the UK.
Hello and welcome to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. I'm Dennis Relojo-Howell, founder of Psych Rich. I love talking to people and learning about their stories. So in each episode of Psych Chat, I'll be talking to fascinating people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. Join me here at Men's Radio Station every week and let's have a Psych Chat.